Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Catapult Virtual Lockdown Salon. I'm very, very pleased to be here. I am Kendel Hippolyte, and this afternoon I'll be talking with a wonderful poet from St. Martin, Rochelle Ward. Um, Before we get into that, I'd like to really express huge thanks, really sincere thanks to the Catapult partners, the American Friends of Jamaica, Kingston Creative, and Fresh Milk of Barbados, in this wonderful initiative to bring the Caribbean artists and public and together to speak. It's beautiful. Thank you so much, Catapult partners. Um, just a quick word to you all that feel free to put in your comments and questions and so on in the comment section during the talk, and we'll get to it afterwards in the Q&A session. So, um, without any further ado, I'd like to welcome Rochelle Ward. Hi, Rochelle.
Hi, Kendall. How are you? Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear, loud and clear. I'm looking forward to continuing the conversations we've been having with the wider public. This is beautiful. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, you're
Yeah,
welcome.
yeah.
You're welcome.
So listen, I mean, a lot of us, a lot of people write, they write poems, write whatever, and then they put it away in a drawer, they hide it on the bed or whatever. And then you get those fools like ourselves who decide to take it into performance or to publish it, that kind of thing. And then, you end up embarking on a journey as a public poet. Um, Tell me something about your own trajectory from writing those poems in a way into getting a public profile as a poet
Public
in St.
profile.
Martin. Yeah, how did that?
Sure. So I've been reflecting on my journey, and I realized that for the most part, my journey into the public was not my intentional pursuit, because my journey started like when I was in my early teens, and I wrote a poem to a mother who had just lost her teenage son. He was in my classroom when I was in primary school. So I remember getting the news and just standing there and crying and crying and crying and crying and crying. And after a while, I was like, let me put this down on paper. And when I did that, I went to the funeral and I shared it with the mom via a card. So for
Mm.
me, it was me passing on this poem to her. But she had a platform and she took that poem to the radio. And then that's how persons heard of my poetry. So I was sent off into the public without realizing it per se. Yeah, it happened like
Yeah,
that for me.
yeah, you're kind of thrown into the deep end. Yeah,
More or less, yes.
yeah. But tell me something. So that was some time back. But I mean, you have a public profile as a poet in St. Martin.
I
Tell
do.
me about it. I mean,
I
how did
do.
they receive you? How do you experience yourself as a poet out there in the public? Do you feel any particular kinds of pressures? What kind of connections do you want to make? Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So right now I can say that as a public poet on St. Martin, I don't feel obligated. I don't feel pressured. I know that at any moment I would be called upon to do poetry. So in some cases, I would always try and continue my writing. And when that time comes and I'm called upon, I'm ready. A lot of my poems have to do with culture and nostalgia and the histories that we have personally. So if there is an event and someone calls me and I have nothing on that topic, I would go ahead and write something, and I would review until the day comes so I can present. So there's never a moment where somebody might tell me, okay, can you come and perform? This is our topic, and I'm like, I don't do those topics. I've never had that because people know me as a culture, so they wouldn't ask out of the
Uh,
box,
uh, uh,
you know
okay.
request
Yeah.
request.
That's an interesting phrase you use there. So you say people know me as culture, Yeah.
Yeah. Ooh. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But going through the sample of poems that you sent me, and I was going through them. I mean, not that all of them are exclusively that, like culture and
Right.
identity and heritage and so on. But a number
Right.
of them, in one way or another, speak to that. Um, what I'd like, before I want to get into that a little more, but I'd like if you would. I've had the pleasure of experiencing a couple of those poems on paper. I'd like if we could share it with the public. One of those poems that really kind of caught my imagination. It's called
Yes.
the one, The Hotel.
The hotel.
Yeah,
Yeah, I can read that one. I mean, everybody in the Caribbean could relate. There is a
I
hotel on
tell
almost
you,
every
yeah,
single
as
Caribbean
soon as
island.
I read, yeah, man, yeah, share the
Everyone.
next
Okay.
one. Yeah.
So the title of this poem is The Hotel. The gray walls are blank, bored like mountain monkeys, and old ink invades the atmosphere. Before brown people and their choreographed still life portraits faded in the sun. Now they are painted over, except for their tongue, live in its juices, and dips the ink into memory, and with strong strokes repaints what has once been there. It is a fragmented history, but ours nonetheless.
It is a fragmented history, but ours nonetheless. Yeah. Those lines struck me from the first time I read them, and I say it's such a Caribbean poem.
Yes,
Um,
it is.
listen, St. Martin. I want to get into St. Martin a little bit, but I'm thinking, do you get a sense of how people respond, say, to let's just lock in for the time being on that poem? You got a sense of how persons respond to that? Do you get comments back from them?
To tell you the truth, Kendel, that's the first time I'm doing that poem in public, period.
Ah,
Yeah, this poem was written in 2018, and I so happened to visit a hotel that I visited when I was younger, and I have a picture of it somewhere in an album, and that poem
mhm,
had a wall with Caribbean life on it.
mhm,
And when I
mhm,
went back to the hotel in 2018, it was a literal gray wall now. It was wiped out. It was just gray.
mm, mm, mm,
So that
mm, mm.
triggered that poem, but I've never, ever, ever read
Okay.
that poem in
All
public. So
right.
we'll get the reaction right now in the chat.
Okay. So this is the premiere.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
definitely.
I've been to St. Martin a couple of times, like at the book fair and so on, and it's for me it's an absolutely fascinating society. That double colonialism thing of the French and the Dutch, that situation of so many nationalities living there, um, and um, and I get the sense, I suppose, for persons like Lasana,
Mhm.
and some of that crew. I get the sense of a kind of a simmering nationalism, issues of identity, issues of heritage and so on going on in there, Um, I want to delve a little bit into that with you, because that was there in the poetry. So, do you see yourself as primarily that, speaking to heritage, history, cultural identity, um,
I think when I do my poetry, I
mhm,
never think of it as being on a big stage. I think of it as my personal experience in the space. See, so as
mm,
a result, these are the things that come forth because of that. So if I would look at the one with the hotel, that's a reality that I had, and because I'm in the Caribbean, many people have a reality similar to it, or they even work in a hotel.
mm,
St. Martin is predominantly tourist based,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
But I didn't
mhm,
think of, hey, we are one of the things that we do in St. Martin is tourism. Let me write a poem about tourists. I don't do it that way. I go from inside out. And because I'm in this space, these are the things that come out, and these are the things that affect me, and these are the things I write about.
mm,
So
mm,
I think I answered your question.
yeah, 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 yeah. Um, that said, and a poem like that, and there are others, imply a kind of a conversation with the society,
Right.
whether it ends up in actual verbal conversations with members of the audience, whoever will talk to you, but it implies a conversation with the society. Um, I'm wondering, to, do you are there other aspects of this conversation, things in yourself, not necessarily into heritage, etc., that you would like to bring into the conversation? So, like, I mean, are there things that are maybe more personal, spiritual, that kind of thing, that you'd like to, yeah, you'd like to engage the society in with?
Engage.
Yeah.
Um, I think we mentioned this a couple of times in our conversations,
Mhm.
and I might be known as a poet. So if there's anything else on a personal level, I shift my genre and I would journal my personal experiences, the soul
Mm,
parts, the spiritual parts. I would journal those, and
mm,
if by chance it becomes a poem, it becomes a poem. But I've never really sat down and say the same thing where I want to talk about, let's say, for example, faith, and I
mm,
write poetry based on that. It
mm,
never comes to that. For some reason, depending on the topic, I will go to the genres. If something grabbed
mm.
my attention, um, last Saturday, the Saturday that just passed, I had a conversation with Rhoda Arundel, and we were on the radio program One St. Martin, and
Uh-huh.
a gentleman was on before me, and he said something about the fact that whenever we have natural disasters, we always go back to our heritage or roots. We go back to the tree rocks that we cook on, right? And when he said that, it grabbed my attention, and I wrote it down. You see, so for me, I'm grabbing information here and there, and eventually it will become something. I've never cooked on tree rocks. That's not my experience. I've never done that. You see, so personally, I wouldn't write about it because I
Yeah,
haven't had the
yeah,
experience,
yeah,
but I've
yeah.
heard about it. You see,
Mhm, mhm,
so
mhm,
that
mhm,
that's what I think about it. Yeah,
mhm, mhm,
yeah.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. Now you're writing in Saint Martin, and let me tell you, I mean, I'm sure you know, Saint Martin is 37 square miles, right? Some
Yes.
Saint 37
37.
square
Yes.
miles. Yeah. Saint Martin has a literary presence, a presence in Caribbean literature that is, I mean, it punches above its weight. The presence is far outside of its actual size. Um, it's always felt to me like there's a place that welcomes writers, that is hospitable to the whole process of writing and so on. Tell me about that. How why does Saint Martin have? I mean, I know Lasagna is part of it too, but why do first of all, do you agree that Saint Martin has this larger than life presence in the Caribbean literary tradition right now? Um, if
Hmm.
so, what accounts for that? Where do you see it and yourself in that large arc of Caribbean writing?
All right. So
I'm throwing a
Lasana
lot
has
at
a
you, I know.
poem.
Yeah,
I know it's okay.
yeah.
Lasana has a poem, and it's along the lines of being small, you might not make a big impact,
Mhm.
but something like a grain of sand has much impact when you drop it in your eye. See? So for me, when I heard that poem, I was just like, yes. You can't find St. Martin on the map at all.
Yeah,
Very few maps have St. Martin on it, but we do still do a punch, like you say, right? So
yeah.
living in this space now, I was introduced to um, things like the book fair
Mhm.
every week. That's how I met you.
Yeah.
Every weekend in June, you have all these writers coming in from the Caribbean, from around the world. And what happens is that the society now has an opportunity to come to those workshops and bring the work that they've been doing in their closets. They
Mm.
come to now share and to interact with writers and do workshops. That's the one of the things that I was exposed to. I did not do literature in high school. And
Mm.
as a result, when I got back, now I got a little hungry because it's like, where's our writing? Who writes and where's our stuff? Right? Because I didn't do literature in high school. I did it in college, but it was American and British, you know how that is. So going back to the question of where do I see myself in all of this, um, I haven't been looking very big at all, but I've seen news of how our writers are making an impact around the world. I see news about Lasana when he's performing in China or Brazil. So those kinds of things make me aware that there is a space for St. Martin writers to go out and drop our little sand in the eyes of the world and make an impact. Other than
Mm.
that, I'm not too familiar with the day-to-day process with individual writers during the year because again, once the book fair is done, my head is back down into the books and I'm focusing on regular life. But once in a blue moon, you would hear things like there is a group of people meeting for poetry every Tuesdays. You'd hear things like, oh, we had a workshop with writers and that became a book. You'd hear things like people self-publishing, and doing very well at it. And Other than that, you have other writers who are now breaking out and doing book launches. And trust me, when we have a book launch, St. Martin comes out to represent. So there is a support for the writer and the St. Martin book. So I do see that. I do see that. Yeah.
Couple things to just clarify. You said when you came back, you said you hadn't done literature in high school. And you said when you came back from where?
From college.
Which was
came
not
back
in
from
St. Martin?
college. No, I
That was
went
not
to no, it wasn't. I went to
Okay.
college in New York, Pace University,
Okay.
and I went from a science forensic vibe thing that I wanted to do
Mhm.
to doing English and communication. And when it was a big jump. But I'm like, why am I doing science? I don't love it. And I realized that I love words. I love interaction. I love communication. I love the word, you know? So I did that. And I got exposed to classical writers in America, Walt Whitman and Dickinson and those people. It wasn't a very intensive course, but when that was done and I went home, it was like, okay, so where's our stuff? Where's our stuff? I need to play catch up now. Yeah, where's our stuff?
Yeah. What's in you is what will come out, you know? Yeah.
Exactly.
What will come out. Okay, so you said you aren't sort of very, very closely involved on a day-to-day basis with whatever writing activities and so on may be going on outside of the context of the book fair. But you did indicate that from time you do hear of like poetry readings going on or persons meeting. I know your knowledge of it may be small, but what can you tell us about, if there are any regular workshop or fairly regular workshop activities going on? Do people show each other their work, get feedback? How does a writer in St. Martin, like yourself, improve his or her connection with the craft and so on of the work with other writers?
So I am super, super busy. So I don't have always have my ears on the pulse of the island in terms of workshops and whatnot. But I can talk personally about myself, for example, when I was working on a work and I wanted to reach out to somebody and I connected with Rhoda. And so I would meet her like here and there and say, Rhoda, listen, I wrote about a couple of pages. Give me what do you think? Give me some feedback. Is that the way to say this word or spell this word, or should I use the St. Martin dialect, or should I keep it, standard? And so I would interact with her on a personal level. So I am almost certain that other people do the same in the sense that they would reach out and say, like, listen, the other day actually a former student of mine reached out to me and said, Miss, I just wrote a novel on Wattpad. I need
A
feedback.
novel what, sorry?
On Wattpad. This is the public platform where you can write books and put them out there for the public.
Okay.
So I've had students in class tell me things like they're in like fourth year of high school, and they said like, yes, miss, I have followers. I have a book on Wattpad. So even at a young age, people are doing things. People are creating things using words, and we do in my school. We give students an opportunity to actually do spoken word, do poetry, and they do it about it. And then eventually, those people who love writing, they actually go out there and they continue writing, and they don't wait for us to tell them this is good or not. They just publish it, and people read it. People read it.
Yeah, the publishing scene in St. Martin is really strong and very self-confident, I find,
Yeah.
I know we come back to Lasagna as Lasagna because it's a really, really seminal influence, but still, he needs to have, and everyone needs to have the sense of responding to that and taking it on board for themselves,
Right.
I got a sense of that. I don't want to digress, but I got a sense of that in Medellin, Colombia, where literature really was a normal part of people's lives. All kinds of persons were publishing and persons going out and I get that in St. Martin, very, very much so. And you say that people actually, they're not about the publisher, but work is selling, right? Work is selling and people are responding to it. It is really, really phenomenal, Okay. I want to come back a bit because I'm wondering the two things are tied in. I want to come back a bit to that nationalist, cultural independence kind of thing. And undercurrent that's in there. And I'm wondering, I mean, do you think part of the response to the public to to the indigenous writing going on in there, and the fact that so many persons feel empowered to go out there and write and so on, you feel that's in some ways tied into this issue of independence for St. Martin, claiming your cultural heritage, etc.? Is it? Am I seeing too much there, or?
I think it depends on the interest of the writer in terms of what they want to say, because not everybody really cares about the politics of the island. Some are more interested in talking about love, and they stick to that, or even love of country, or how they love a particular sunset or beach or market. I think it depends on the writer itself. I personally don't feel that a lot of them are writing about the fact that we need to be independent. But again, like myself, I remember again recently, I wrote a very short piece, very short. I didn't even think anybody was really watching. Very short piece, because we had during the lockdown, the island's border became an issue. See?
Okay.
Because on an everyday level, when you're living our normal lives, we just go from place to place, north to south. We cross the border. It's no big deal. It's no pat down or search or anything like that. No written document to say you can cross and come back. You see, so when that issue happened on September 16th, everybody came out, and they came out with the other flag of St. Martin, right? So you would notice that even if nobody's talking about it, there is a response to things like that in the public. They would come out. And a particular photographer, she took a picture, and the picture was so strong and powerful. I wrote a piece on it, right? And what happened is that you start to see that in moments like that, the artist's representation matters, because everybody would, okay, I attended the event, everything went well, but when you see the picture with the spirit of the people, it grabs your attention. And I think for some people, they so happen to be in the right place at the right time for those things to happen, and you always have a writer in there to document it, or an artist.
Curiosity, you said the other flag of St. Martin. What do you mean?
There is another flag for St. Martin. It's predominantly yellow and green. A lot of people might not know about it, but it's the unity flag, right? And the normal St. Martin flag is red, white, and blue, but there is a people flag. And the interesting thing is, we came out as a people on that day, and that flag was used instead of the normal government flag.
Stick up in this people flag. How did it originate? Who created it? This is the first I'm hearing of this. Absolutely.
So I'm gonna just quickly say all the information is in National Symbols.
Okay.
A book, a collection of our notable figures, including that flag information. So get National Symbols. It has it in there. You didn't know about that flag, right?
No, I didn't. And I've been there twice, and I didn't know.
Yes.
Rochelle, you're taking. I'm hearing you, but and what's coming across to me is that there's a way in which you, to my mind, almost like taking for granted. I don't mean that in a bad way, because it comes across as normal to you to take it for granted that people are embedded in, connected to their culture in a way and one thing that that on such occasion, people will come out, the alternate flag will come out, that kind of thing, and while I do hear you that yes, of course, persons will write about love, they will write about landscape and that kind of thing, but I just can't help but feel that strong sense of connection of the literature and the actual and the actual sociopolitics, whether it's overt or otherwise, I want to go a little bit into your process or lack of process as a writer. It struck me when I was looking at the sample pieces. I think it was about 15 poems. the visuality in the poems really struck me. There really were some interesting images. And a little from now, I'll ask you to, this poem I'm going to choose to ask you to bring that out. So there's some interesting visuality, interesting images going on in the poems. And yet at the same time, because I'm a fanatic about craft in poetry, for me, sometimes I thought I was seeing missed opportunities to shape the poems rhythmically,
Right.
And so that kind of had me wondering, and I'm wondering out loud now too. Yeah, I want us to talk about craft in poetry. Like everybody has a first draft. I want you to take me through a bit. How do you go from what you consider to be a first draft to what you consider to be the final, or final or not? This is this it. I can't do any more with it. What happens from there to there? What's your craft process?
Okay, so I'm gonna use the Sualiga poem as my example. When I first wrote that poem, it was actually about 4 poems, separate, individual, not connected poems, right? So I think that sometimes poetry comes to me in pieces, not as a whole. So for that particular poem, I wrote down 4 lines for one section, another line, and when I looked at it, I realized, wow, all of these things are connected. So I started to sew it together, right, and make it into one poem. On the other hand, there are times when I have a poem. In that moment, it feels like, okay, this is what I want to say. And I go line by line and ask myself, can I see this? Is this complete? I try to break it down into questions, because sometimes when you write something, you think everything in your head came out on the paper.
Yeah.
Right? You think so. So what I would do, I put it away for a little bit and I come back at it and ask, like grill myself, interrogate myself and say, this first stanza, what is it about? What's missing? What's going on here? Why are you saying it that way? Can you use a different word? I have not gone so deep that I'm going word for word and living in a dictionary, but I ask myself these questions. I write down the lines, and I don't always start off with a draft and then say, well, let me make this into a sestina. Do I have the structure down? I don't go in that direction. I write it, I ask questions, I put it away. I go over it in my mind, and I ask myself and I adjust. And then after I would say, let me leave you alone. And sometimes a year later, and I read it and I ask myself, who wrote this? Or I would say, no, I'm not there anymore. I think we need to restructure completely. I don't really want that to go out into the world. Let's restructure. This is a stronger message. This is what I really want to say.
You mentioned the poem Sualiga, and you've got a wonderful video of it that I really took to. So I'd like if we get to see that video right now.
Sualiga. Sualiga is a woman with rock wall plaits in her hair and white sand painted on her toes. I know her. I come from her belly, lived on her body, smelled the yeasting of her pond, her breast milk gone. Her lips are liquid red and her fingers cannot hold a pen. They are brittle from picking sour diamonds from the water in her tub. Sualiga isn't who she used to be. She is slipping away from me. Most of her children don't look back. Most don't see her dull, expressionless eyes. Once, I begged her to tell me her story. So she opened her mouth, but there was a black pool of blood saturating the space where her tongue was. Sualiga has remembered me. I am one of her daughters, and the fire in my tongue will speak for her.
I told you before, those lines, the fire in my tongue will speak for her. Who's Sualiga?
Sualiga is the Amerindian name for Saint Martin, land of salt.
Land of salt, yeah. That's another thing about Saint Martin that intrigues me, the way that salt the way that salt figures in their history. Of course, for most of the rest of the Caribbean islands, it's sugar.
Look at that difference.
It's sugar.
Look at that
It's not
difference.
it's salt.
And I
They
find that
go on.
the preservation, salt is preservation.
Mm-hmm.
But I find sometimes we don't really preserve what we have on the
Mm-hmm.
island. There is something that should have been culturally acknowledged, culturally protected, preserved. Is not. I grew up around the salt pond, so you see certain things. It's natural for me. I would be driving to school, going to school when I was younger, past the salt pond, and there's this imagery that I've learned to have about the salt pond growing up, and that imagery was it smells stink. So I had a
Mm.
negative reaction to it, and a lot of people
Okay.
had a negative reaction to it.
Okay.
So it's so funny that we have that as something historical that, in some sense, could have been, honored in a way, but it wasn't not. It wasn't taken care of. It
Mm.
wasn't. It wasn't loved. So for me, I took that concept, turned it into a female, and then said, "Boom, this is what she's going through."
Yeah.
And then she can't speak for herself, so I'll do it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Really, really visual poem. Really, yeah, really, really visual. Um, how do you see yourself sitting next? I don't know. I mean, not saying you have a program, but ideally, next 5, 7 years for you as a writer in St. Martin. Um, Ideally, what do you want to see, and how do you make yourself get closer to what you want to see?
In terms of my work or the island itself?
Both, in terms of your work and in terms of the relation of your work with the island.
So for me, my work, I feel a little bit clearer as I'm going along, especially in this year, what I do and how I do it. So I'm in terms of clarity, in terms of content, I see myself in the next few years, 5 years, 7 years, producing up to like 6 to 7 collections. Because now I understand my areas of themes and I can dig deeper into those areas. So for me, I can produce more, understanding myself more and the topics that I deal with. In terms of my work in relation to the place I reside in, I hope that I can somehow foster and help create a love for what we have, right? And to speak on behalf of the people, not being in a arrogant way, but again, I've experienced this place, and this is how I experienced this place, and as a result, I am recording my experience. And because so many people were raised in the same way I was raised, we do certain things the same way. They would have a collection, book or books with
Mm,
how we do things, and our
mm,
culture can be in words that
mm,
can somehow pass on to other generations as
mm,
well. So I want to foster the love for our place. I want to honor our place. I want to again uplift the things that we do. And for example, one of the topics I deal with is natural hair, right? And it's a whole concept of being a woman, being a Caribbean woman, and not having other external forces, other external mediums come in and dictate how I live or how I treat my hair or how I love on my hair. And we have a
mm,
culture of, for example, using aloes to go wash your hair, or mixing your little thing here and there, and avocado and all the things that other countries don't quite have, use, and then sell back to us. You see, so for me, there's certain areas that I am very passionate about. Hair is one of them. So for me, it's gonna enter into my work, and I'm gonna try and I'm not bashing anyone. I'm not gonna bash. I'm gonna educate. I'm gonna share and say, listen,
mm,
this is our hair. You
mm.
got love on your hair, man. This is how we live. Women head wraps. We have a culture
Yeah.
of head wraps. People used to use head wraps. Market women use head wraps. Anybody was using head wraps, and I don't
Mm.
want those types of things to fall off, and go
Yeah.
away, because they are relevant to how we live. They're relevant to
Yeah.
how we live. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
how I see my work and the island, and how my work can impact the island in the years to come.
Okay. You're hopeful?
Positive. I'm
Uh,
positive. Yeah.
I'm going to ask you to read something in a while, but first I want to again thank the Catapult partners, the American Friends of Jamaica, Kingston Creators, and Fresh Milk for really providing this wonderful opportunity, for all of us to talk from the comfort of our own rooms and spaces all across the Caribbean. Um, would you do the poem Unhatched? I'm back to my thing of visuality in poetry. Yes, yes, some of them really kind of
Um,
just kind of struck me.
okay, unhatched.
Yeah, lovely. Thanks.
My grandmother's house picked up its skirts and stepped across a narrow footpath, a crooked eyebrow on the map above Charlestown, too narrow for cars to pass. A rusting drum collects rainwater beside her wooden leg, and like a hen, she straddles a box of old books with winter worms, borrowing cities beneath words and pages. These were the only books I've ever feared.
Oh Lord, yeah. No, that opening image there, just it's really just really really knocked me out. Do you paint? Do you draw? Do you do indulge in visual art in any way?
Once upon a time, once upon a time, I find that any type of creative work,
Mhm.
I will be there, but I would not go and pursue it in terms of mastery. I would do it for fun. So I would
Mm,
take an art class and just do like a
mm,
pottery once and just do. One of my favorite art forms is
mm.
actually cooking. Because for me, cooking is almost all the senses, the smell,
Okay.
the touching, the textures, the taste. Oh, the taste, and I was
Ah,
telling somebody yesterday actually that I challenged myself and I became a vegetarian for about 5 years. Not because I wanted to save anything, but
yeah.
because I'm like, what can I do creatively in
Uh,
terms of food? And
uh,
so creatively, I kind of touch in different areas because
okay.
I like to. It's holistic for me.
Mm, mm, mhm, mhm, mhm. You said a little earlier, cooking for me, by the way, listen, I tell people, um, I learned time management from two things: directing and cooking. Honestly, because with both of them, once you start, you got to keep
Yep.
you got to keep your eye on your focus on a number of different elements and bringing everything together in one. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
So
That's
taste
correct.
fine, but the whole time management here is wonderful. Um, yeah, kind of slipped me what I was about to ask you. Okay, yeah, you did speak a bit about your where you see yourself, your writing in 5, 7 kind of years time,
Mhm.
and the sense in which you want to relate it to the whole development of St. Martin. You didn't use the word development in St. Martin, but that's my impression. That's my understanding of what you're saying. What it feels like an almost unfair and tough question, but what kind of shape of society would you like to see St. Martin
Become.
becoming? Yeah.
I think I was influenced by Lasana a little bit. The whole
Okay.
concept of being independent.
Hmm.
For me, I would like to see my society stand on its own, not necessarily to be, oh, we are independent, we don't need anybody, not like that. I want it to be a place where the young people can actually, again, go back to our origin in terms of become entrepreneurs, you know, be unafraid of being creative, be unafraid of producing work and go out and do things in the world. So you don't have to, of course, stay in St. Martin, but you can do great things and be just as proud as any other national, any other place, and represent your territory. And for me, I prefer that kind of spirit, a spirit of we can do excellence and we can do it well and we do it in all areas, and to have that confidence and fearlessness to do so, and on top of that, be the kind of people who cherish where we are. So if if it so happens that somebody comes into our space, and let's say a very simple example, they drop a napkin in the middle of Front Street and they keep walking, you
Right.
have that national reaction of, excuse me, miss, can you, we don't do it here. We value the place so much. We take good care of
Yeah.
it. And you can feel and you can see the love that we have for
Yeah.
our country, the way we take care of it, the way we talk about our people, the way we talk about our work in the world. That's what I would love.
Yeah. That's an interesting example you brought on there. It's so simple about they drop a piece of paper or napkin, whatever, and then you have the confidence to tell them, no, that's not how you do it. You yourself exemplify that spirit so much. I'd like to welcome the audience to with their questions and comments and so on. Right now, feel free to jump in. Anybody wants to say anything, I'm looking forward to seeing the kind of questions and comments that come up. Yeah. So Annalie's asking whether you can talk about the role of the House of Nahisi publishers on your professional development, yeah, and the literary environment in St. Martin and the wider Caribbean.
Yeah.
Key question.
So
Yeah.
I was introduced to Lasana via Rhoda, right? And as a result, I was able to actually have a network of people that actually included House and Nahasi, right? And because I was the kind of individual I
Sorry,
attended, I was a part.
let me just take a minute. Rhoda,
Yeah.
because you mentioned the name twice. I know who she is, but can you just say a little bit so we have a
Okay,
sense of?
so Rhoda is she was once upon a time, this was not her cultural identity though. She was once upon a time one of the ministers on the island. She is a linguist, an educator. She is very passionate about young people and volleyball and sports. Right. So I met her via the university. So she came with her circle, and Lasana was included in that circle, and Suja Ref was included in that circle. And because I'm connected to these people, I have connections with other people as well. I got involved and I learned about Clara Race, who is, I would call her the bearer of our national dance, right? So I got introduced to Hausa Nehesi. Because Hausa Nehesi was so visible to me, I got more interested in my own writing. I learned of other writers. They also partner with the St. Martin Book Fair, Conscious Lyrics, the University of St. Martin. So when they did that, they started having every single year the annual book fair. They were basically giving the St. Martin people an opportunity to have a space to come to and actually develop yourself culturally, right? So it wasn't only poets, it was writers, visual artists, people who do music, rap, you know. So we had a space to come together and actually bring what we're working on. And there's this anticipation when it's coming up, you go and you look for your writing, you know,
Yeah.
and so it has been key, because many of our young people, they go through school and there's hardly any idea that, oh, you know, you can become a writer. You might be the next St. Martin writer. So they having developed that space helped, you know, make it more of a reality. And you have a lot of writers who were able to publish as a result of having access to House and Nehesi. You see, because if you think of publishing off the top of your head and you're coming from this like little island, you might be wondering, who can I connect with and should I be publishing? You know, so you're kind of a little daunted by the whole process of publishing a little bit. And House and Nehesi was able to actually give us that kind of space to do all of that, to do all of that.
Yeah. It's because I'm telling you, St. Martin normalized for me. It really kind of was of normalizing the place of literature in people's lives. You know, at some point in my growing up, when I travel, I went to Jamaica, other places, and so on. I realized what a gift I had growing up in St. Lucia. Not that I wanted to be a writer or anything like that, but just the idea of growing up with the idea that it's okay to write. You know, and the Walcott example was large. It wasn't oppressive. I never found it oppressive, but it was large. It normalized the idea of being a writer and so on. There's a certain amount of self-publishing in St. Lucia, not to the degree of St. Martin, because St. Martin has the infrastructure for it. That's the thing that we don't have here. You know, but that's a tremendous gift, really tremendous gift that House of Nahisi and Lasagna did. You know.
And sometimes you don't see it, Kendel, because you're smack dab in the middle of it, so you don't really see half of the things you tell me, I'm like, you see that? I don't see
Yeah,
that because I'm right in the space. You
yeah,
see, I'm in the
exactly.
space. I don't really see it.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So it's how to add to it, how to expand it, and in a way, how can that example? I'm not saying that's a burden on you, but how can that example inspire other Caribbean islands
Yes.
that I mean that no doubt that there be as much talent around, but it's not highlighted, it's not channeled, it's not brought to the society and brought out into the wider world. How can the example of St. Martin help to make that happen? So I'm not throwing
Right.
that at you. I'm just kind of thinking
Okay.
out loud. Um, I'd love to hear you read another poem. The great auntie's hair. Well, because you mentioned hair a little earlier on, and you're interested and so on. Great auntie's hair was one that struck me. If you can get to that, and I'd
Okay.
love to
And then
hear
we
it
could
again.
probably get another question as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah. The questions are
in the
welcome, people.
meantime.
Very very welcome.
Okay. So this is a very
Mhm.
short poem, and we could probably say the question first, and then we'll
Okay.
do the short poem.
Okay. Fine. Are you seeing the
Okay.
question? Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay.
Bim Vibe says, "How can I become a poet? And what do you recommend I do?" Perfect. So guess what? You are already a poet because you opened your mouth this morning. You probably said good morning. You said something to somebody. So consider yourself, and I give you all privileges. You are already a poet. Number one, because you speak. Number two, because you're interested. The thing I would like you to do to become official is that with any skill set, you need to first, of course, do what poets do, right? So I can't call myself a poet and don't write poetry. So you need to start looking at the activities and the things that poets do. Chances are poets read a lot, or they're very observant. So today, and don't wait till tomorrow. Today, when we're finished, look around you and observe what is standing out to you. What is feeling making you feel uncomfortable. Pay attention to your emotions, right? What is making you feel ridiculously happy? What is making you feel super depressed? Write these things down, or even record yourself saying them. So pay attention to your emotions. Pay attention to your surroundings. What is grabbing your attention in the newspaper? On the radio, um, on television. For me, there's certain articles that grab my attention. And because they grab my attention, boom, it triggers a thought and I write it down. So for you as well, be very observant, tap into your emotions. And on top of that, best of all, find mentors like Kendel, read his work, get inspired, read other poets, go on YouTube, find out what is the skill set of poetry, right? So you have certain things that structure and form, like Kendall mentioned earlier. What is a poem? The
Yeah.
types of poems. You might find that you're long-winded, so you might like the long poems, and how do you form those things? So please understand that it's not fair to you to simply just decide, okay, I'm a poet, and then you force yourself to come out with a poem in like the next 15 minutes. No. Relax, learn what it is, write it out, revisit it. You're basically having in your hand a set of words that you're cultivating, you're forming. So for poets, words are our sculpting mechanism. We're forming something. So you can do that and consider yourself a poet.
Mhm. You've covered so many bases there in your answer. Really, so many bases. So yeah, yeah, you've given the person quite a lot to touch on. We have a couple more questions. I think it's wonderful to hear from. Yeah.
So Van Arneman, Jonathan's asked, as a writer, do you ever feel like some stories are not yours to tell? Do you have any examples of a time where you choose not to write about something? Ooh, you're making me go deep.
Uh-huh.
Um, I think I've never really had a strong repulsion to something that comes to mind when I hear a story. So if an idea comes to me, I've never, to my recollection, can think of a time where I get very afraid or I get very annoyed and say, well, I ain't doing that, I ain't saying that. I'm not gonna put that together. I've never had that reaction. So for me, I guess my path, the things that I do, the things that I'm exposed to, the things that come to me, I would say they are for me, because they came to me. So I've never literally had a visceral reaction to say, I'm not writing about that. You crazy? No, it's never happened for me. So I would say no. Whatever comes to me is for me, and I write it down. My only thing is I hope that I do it in a way that people understand the message. I think that was part of the question. I hope I answered the second part of it.
I
Okay, a time when I choose not to write something. Actually, I could tell you about one incident. One incident, and it wasn't because it was not mine to tell. It's because I got so scared only because I thought I could not come back if I went down that hole. I was writing about a birth, and in the middle of writing it, I catch myself and I was all crying and getting all emotional, and I'm like, okay, I can't do this anymore because it was so heavy. So in terms of fear of telling the story versus fear of um, going even deeper, I think that's a little different. So that would be one example that happened to me where I did it. I wasn't expecting to get so involved, so immersed, so overwhelmed. And I realized I need to find the time to get to that space and also find the time to get back out. So that would be my example for you.
mm, 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 um, are there any other questions? I'm not certain. No. Literary
You want to read
festival.
this one, Kendel?
Yeah, thanks so much, Ken and Rochelle. What are your thoughts, as the two of us, on literary festivals in the region in terms of both professional development and building a regional community? Yeah. I have benefited so much. I'll just speak for myself very, very briefly. I've benefited so much from those I've attended, Calabash and Bocas, the one in Barbados, I'd love to go to some of the others, like in Montserrat and so on. You really, oh man, you really, what Americans call bang for the buck. So much comes out of that. You can't always quantify it, but so much
Right.
comes out of that. So much because Mia Motley, I mean, in a normal, that tremendous speech, spoke to the sense of understanding our own size in the world. And something like a literary festival, what it leaves you with, not just you as practitioner and so on, but the audiences who come to it, what it leaves them with
Right.
is a sense of, whoa, all this
Yes,
is us.
yes, yes.
That kind of cultural confidence can drive so much. So I wish that it would happen more. And literary festivals, as opposed to say performing arts festivals, which require more infrastructure and so on, literary festivals can happen pretty much anywhere, any country, any island in the Caribbean. So yeah, I'd like to see more of it. Yeah.
And it's very crucial, like you said, to professional development, because if it hadn't been for a literary festival, I wouldn't pay attention so much to my craft or my art or anything like that. So it's very key that people have a space to actually attend, and literary festivals actually provide that. And it helps to develop the community and bring a certain set of people together regionally and around the world. So it's key. It's something that we should always have.
Yeah, yeah. I really think that there is such a thing called Caribbean civilization, really and truly.
I
Really and
agree with
truly.
you. I agree
And when
with
you go to
you.
these festivals, it gets confirmed for you, meeting the other writers from other places. And you just know it, Yeah. I'd love to hear you read Great Aunties here. Can I?
The great auntie. You want to hear a joke though, and it goes back to the last question we actually have very quickly. Great Auntie's Hair was written during the festival in Dominica. So I attended a festival there, and in a workshop, this came out. So Great Auntie's Hair. She must have played with the devil. That's what they said. She, this straight back woman, aged, sitting between my mother's legs as she combed her fingers and coconut oil through black, undyed hair. So here you have a very old woman, very old. Her hair was jet black, and something was wrong with that. Yeah. So
Phenomenal, simple image, but a phenomenal image, and you can just see it. You really can just see it. Yeah. I'm really grateful for the Catapult partners.
thank you. Yes.
American Friends of Jamaica. Crystal Creed. Sorry. Sorry, let me get that right. Yeah, the American Friends of Jamaica and Kingston Creative and Fresh Milk Program. I'm really, really, really grateful for them for making this salon and all what they've done before and all what's going to come up for making this happen. Please feel free and remember to tune in again at 4 p.m. AST, Atlanta Standard Time, or 3 p.m. Jamaica time, when I will be talking with the Jamaican theater practitioner and cultural entrepreneur, Ebony Walters. So I'm looking forward to that myself. I've been blessed in a couple of persons, my co-discussants. So I'm looking forward to that. 4 p.m. Our regular time here, yes, Standard Time, 3 p.m. Jamaica time. So I'm really, really looking forward to that. So anything that you'd like to say, share, that we haven't covered, or you'd like to make sure get out there to those other persons in our salon?
Well, again, I do agree with your sentiments, and I'm also very grateful. And I'm super grateful that I actually had an opportunity to connect with you again, because it's so important that we, stay connected with one another and bounce off the ideas, do the discussions. And this was a very, very, very good initiative. So I just want everybody to, again, like you said, connect again at 4 o'clock today and whatnot. So yeah, thank you so much for attending, and you can close it off.
Yeah. I always feel energized when I connect with the younger generation and what they're doing. In some ways, they're continuing what a person like myself and those before me have been doing, and in other ways, they're taking it into other directions. That whole upsurge of spoken word and so on is bringing an audience into the craft of poetry,
Right.
in ways that were different to how I was brought into it. And I don't think that the things that are opposed, the so-called page poetry, and they're not opposed. They reinforce each other. So so I'm really grateful for that opportunity that's provided for by the Catapult partners. So saying thank you to everyone, saying bye to the audience, but we'll be connecting with you later. And thank you so much, everyone. All the very, very best. Blessings. Yeah. Bye.